you coining that terminology, and now Steppin has spread all over the world, brother. There would be no Steppin if it weren't for Sam Chatman.
And you know, the amazing thing is that I think about that all the time, and I think about the sacrifices.
OG, 2 letters that define respect. I created the original OGs to document the forgotten parts of American history. I want to recognize and give a voice to the men and women that have climbed to the top of their game. The men and women this marquee have been authenticated as original OGs. Welcome to my world, a world of the originals, the unique. Welcome to the original OGs. Welcome to the original OGs, and I'm your host, OG Mr. Rick. Hey, today, man, I got a fantastic show for you. You don't want to miss this. Look, I've been knowing this gentleman since I was knee-high to a pup, and I followed him. You know, he was the big brother of the community, you know what I'm saying? If you didn't know this guy, then apparently you was under a rock or something. But this is my man right here, and I'm so proud and honored to be able to get him. We've been trying to put this together for a minute. This is Triple OG, Sam Chatman.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hey, man, how you feeling, bro?
Hey, I'm Sam-tastic.
Sam-tastic, you heard it, and don't forget it. When somebody asks you how you doing, you say Sam-tastic.
I'm
Sam-tastic. That's where we at.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? We gonna get right into it, man. Like I say, this is my man, you know what I'm saying? I've been knowing him a long time. Always have been good to me. He's been an idol to me through the whole flick because, I mean, he came along when black folk was really trying to do their thing. Sam stepped in and gave us a culture that we still have today. In fact, he coined the word steppin'. Hey, Sam, where were you born at?
I'm originally from Mississippi.
That's what I'm
But
talking
everybody think I'm from St. Louis because that's where I spent most of my childhood in St. Louis. And I came to Chicago in 1956 and went to Crane High School.
Wow, 1956. I wasn't even born until 1958. Wow. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm a man.
You see, but hey, you know, but you said something that just struck me. You said you were born in St. Louis.
Raised in St. Louis. You know what? I love St. Louis, but now 1 year in Chicago, and I never wanted to go back again. Chicago was just a totally different ball game for me. I thought St. Louis was the ultimate,
right?
But Chicago turned out to be the ultimate.
And what year did you come to Chicago?
1956.
Wow, 19.
And you say you wasn't even born then?
I wasn't even born, and this was a whole nother world.
Okay, and I went to Crane High School in 1956, and probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me was going to Crane High School.
Oh, really? Why would you say that?
Because I met some incredible people. A basketball player named Tim Robinson, who was an All-American. Bill Freeman was one of the DJs at the Peppermint Lounge, and I got a chance to, the Diane and Donald Swope, Sam Gage, just incredible superstars at Crane High School.
You came up in that, per se, 60s thing.
The 60s, and in the 60s.
In the 60s, WVON was our world.
The Black Giant.
I'm trying to tell you, hey.
Joe Cobb.
Man.
Don Cornelius. Herb Kent. You name it. E. Rodney Jones. Purvis Spann.
Wow.
They were legends.
Phenomenons.
Unbelievable.
And you worked with them all.
I worked with them. I worked with Purvis. I worked with Herb. I worked with Spann. E. Rodney Jones. Richard Steele.
Still around here.
Maybe... Joe Cobb was, he was the voice of Soul Train.
Right.
I never actually worked with Joe Cobb or those guys, but most of the guys at WVON I work with.
Did you work with Big Bill Hill?
I did. Big Bill Hill he had a trailer on Madison in the 4700 block on Madison. I was at the Keyman's Club right down the street from half a block from him. Big Bill Hill, I got to know his daughter.
Wow.
She was a doctor and a beautiful lady too. but I never actually worked with him. But Bill Hill was my idol.
Hey, man.
I worked at the radio station, the same radio station that Big Bill Hill worked at, but he was like my idol as a kid.
Big Bill Hill was the Soul Train before Soul Train.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
He had his own show.
It was a whole nother game.
Rhythm and Blues or something like that. He had a dance show on I think Channel 19 or something. People relate me to Big Bill Hill a lot, but I tell them I didn't particularly care for him because I wasn't in the blues at that time.
Get it.
And he was a blues Howlin' Wolf, and
hardcore,
Muddy Waters, and I didn't like that kind of music.
I get it.
As I got older, I started loving it.
You appreciated it.
Yes.
My father was a professional blues drummer. Everybody you just played, they would always call for JD.
Wow.
To play the drums.
Unbelievable.
And my father didn't want me involved at all because he said it's a rotten business.
Oh, it was a heck of a business.
Yeah, I was so infatuated with it that I just figured I could do it different.
You talk about Soul Train, Don Cornelius and Soul Train. Now, Soul Train had a group called the Soul Train Gang.
Right.
I actually auditioned them for Don Cornelius at Lonnie Skyway Lounge over on 75th Street.
And that was Don Cornelius.
Don Cornelius.
What was your journey like with
Don Cornelius? Don Cornelius and I was never actually, buddies or friends. But Clinton Gent, who was one of who to me he was Soul Train. He's the one that went out to California and taught them how to do the Soul Train line and all of that. And he tried to teach them. He told me personally he tried to teach them how to step, but they couldn't pick it up. They couldn't get it. But anyway, they had a group called the Soul Train Gang.
Right.
And they was at Boppin Lounge on the West Side. They sung for me, and they were so phenomenal. I asked them. They slept on my floor for 2 days.
Wow.
To go to the Don Cornelius had a set every Tuesday at Lonnie Skyway Lounge, Soul Train night. That's when he was here in the city. And I took the group out there to audition for Don Cornelius. And Don Cornelius fell in love with him. When he went to California, when he moved the Soul Train to California, he signed the Whispers first, then he signed the Soul Train Gang. At that particular time, Howard Hewitt wasn't a part of Shalimar.
Right.
They became later. Right. But those are the first two groups that Don Cornelius signed for Solar Records.
Wow.
Whispers and then the Soul Train Gang. And I felt kind of instrumental because I auditioned them for Don. I knew Don Cornelius would love them. They were phenomenal. When I watched Soul Train on Saturday, I used to feel like I was a part of that because of...
Now, when did you start having an interest in DJing?
I would say, I'm guessing, I'm rough, 63, 64, 65, something like that. I went to CTA in 1965. Maybe about 63, 64, I became 21. And I would go to Barbara Peppermint Lounge and on Harrison and Kedzie, listen to this DJ named Bill Freeman, Carl Merritt, Tim Robinson, and those were like my idols at that time. And I felt like it was something missing. These guys, to me, they were good DJs, but they didn't speak, they didn't articulate as well as I did. Hey, I could communicate a little better.
I get it.
And so I became interested in, I instantly loved Smokey Robinson.
Wow.
I instantly loved Eddie Kendricks, instantly.
I get it.
And so I wanted to transfer this music, my love for this music, over to everybody else.
And were they bopping at that time?
They were bopping at that time, and the phrase stepping came a little later on.
When did you feel like you were amongst the top DJs? We're talking Herb, Kent, and all these guys.
And that's funny that you mentioned when did I feel that.
Right.
I never forget doing an event. My friend Bill Freeman asked me to sit in for him one Friday at Barbara Peppermint Lounge. This group they called themselves the We Five. Pudge was one of the leaders of the group. I just did his funeral 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Over at Trinity Church.
Wow.
And I get to the event, and they didn't know I was coming. So I get to the event, and I hear these guys, you know, they see me setting up my equipment. You know, I got the little shelf speakers and, you know.
Right.
And I could hear them talking. Oh man, man, where's Bill Freeman?
Right.
Man, where's Chico?
What is
That's
this?
what his name. Sam gonna bleep out. He gonna bleep up our set, you
Right.
know, because they had a packed house every Friday. It was an after work set on Friday, and you know, and it kind of hurt my feelings, you know.
I get it.
And you know, I'm listening to them talk, you know, and, man, where's Chico? Man, with Sam? Oh, I hope he ain't the DJ. Man, he gonna run our set. 2 hours later, Pudge came to me and said, "We fired Chico. You our DJ." I said, "No, I can't. No, I can't undercut him like that." And I didn't. So from that point on, I knew that I had the ability to do that. And everybody that came in the door, and one thing you can relate to this. Everybody came in the door, I knew their name.
Exactly.
So-and-so in the house and so-and-so.
Exactly.
And, you know, and
for
a lot
years.
of people for still do that. And a lot of people say, well, Sam talks a lot. Well, these are the DJs that can't talk.
Hello?
You know, they the one put that room out by me talking a lot. And I don't over talk, you know, but I recognize, I know who to recognize. I felt like I got to get me a regular spot where I got. So finally, Barbara gave me Wednesdays every Wednesday night. And I kept Wednesdays for a long time, a couple of years. And I realized that I could do it.
I'm on sidetrack for a minute. I have cousin Danny.
Mm-hmm. Cousin Danny was a person that used to come to the Keeman's Club every Friday, and he would stand behind me, and he would talk music and and say little knickknacks and stuff. So I said, well, maybe I'll find out what he can do. So I would pretend like I had to go to the washroom.
Right.
And I'd say, Dan, help kiss the box for me while I go to the washroom. And I'd let him play for an hour or so. And then the next thing I know, and his name, cousin Danny, his name was Danny Williams, I think.
Right.
And his name, I started calling him Cousin.
Okay.
And Cousin stuck, and he liked it.
Right.
And he became Cousin Danny. So I didn't hire him, he hired me. I tell people, he hired me as a DJ. And I just let him continue to spin. And when I moved to the South Side, I brought him with me.
Wow.
And he became Cousin Danny. He was with me at the Dungeon. And
yes,
then in
sir.
1978, I moved from, I outgrew the Dungeon. I moved to Purv's house.
Right.
Purvis Staples' place. And I basically gave Danny the Dungeon. He could stay there, and I was going on to I thought bigger things, and actually it turned out to be bigger things. Purvis house became East of the Rhine, etc.
Right,
et
but I wanna stop a little bit because this is gonna set up my next question. The Dungeon, the importance of the Dungeon. Give me some history. You say you spent there for God knows how many years. I
don't know how long. When I reflect on the Dungeon, I can't remember how many years.
Forever.
But the good thing about the Dungeon is that I met like Taboo and George Macaroni, Ice Ray, and all these people at the Dungeon. At the Dungeon, the weird thing about the Dungeon is that the guys, like I say, basically the Dungeon was a disciple crowd.
Right.
But the El Rukins and the Blackstone Rangers came to the Dungeon, and these guys got to know each other and they got along. I'll never forget Taboo. I took George Macaroni, Ice Ray. I took them to the Keeman's Club after I got to know all the guys from the Dungeon. I said, I want to pick y'all up one Friday and take you to the West Side. He said, we can't go on the West Side. I said, man, come on.
You can.
Y'all with me, we can go. So I took them to the West Side. And they introduced him to all the, to Willie Lloyd and not Freddie Gage and all those guys on the West Side. So I want you guys to meet these guys,
Right.
And they said, well, we can't go over there. And then these guys over there, they'll do something to us. I said,
No, they
no,
ain't.
you're not going to do nothing to you with me. So anyway, at the end of the night, Macaroni, Taboo, and all the guys, they were, dancing and they were phenomenal dancers. And the people, they had them in a circle and the ladies was screaming.
Wow.
So the guys got a little upset. So at the end of the night, I look up, Taboo and Macaroni and all the guys sitting in the lobby waiting on me because I brought them over there in my car. But not Willie Lloyd, but Freddie Gage and all of his crew was across the street. They waiting over there with bats and bricks. And they gonna wail on their head.
Right.
So I say, man, I go outside. I see all these guys. What are y'all over here for? He said, we waiting on them some Southside guys.
No.
I said, oh no, y'all come on back inside, and we introduce you to these. So I brought all the gang, the Four Corner Hustlers, and all them back in the Keyman's Club that Friday night to meet all,
Right.
meet all the Southside. And these guys are, what's amazing, Mr. Rick, these guys are still friends
Today.
today.
I think people need to understand how powerful that was because the division amongst different organizations was so widespread. And for you to be able to bring these guys, you didn't just bring them to the West Side, you brought the West Side to the South Side. And that was unheard of back then,
It's unheard of.
And you played a very, very important role in that, through Steppin. And people need to understand how powerful Steppin and DJing is, but when you DJ, it's a whole nother game.
You know what, and sometimes I reflect back on that and I think about, someone, a young lady said to me once, she told me, you just don't realize how many lives you saved, doing that. And I said, I never really thought about that. And then she said, you also don't realize how many babies.
Hello. How many people you brought together.
Yes. And then I started investigating and I found out the relationships within the South Side and the West Side, the guys and the girls, how many kids,
Exactly.
actually came from that the division.
Hey man, I could walk in a place like Brick's place. I say, okay, Sam DJing tonight. That's how powerful you are because you have a certain style of playing music. Certain people got a certain lane. You don't have a lane.
One of my favorite records right now is called Mr. Music Man.
Yes, sir.
They're one of the hottest records in the nation. But by the same token, I can play Mr. Music Man and follow that with The Evidence Life in the Country. And
See
that
what I'm
record was
saying?
made 30, 40 years ago. And I don't have a, how some people talk about your range. I don't have a range. I'm gonna play a certain song. You can ask me for it. I'm gonna play
Exactly.
James Brown. I'm gonna play Barry White. You just know it. And think about these records were recorded 40 years ago, 50 years
50
ago,
years
and they
ago.
sound like they brand new.
Man, you will be sitting there, man, and you start playing stuff, man, way back in the 50s. And I'm like, wow.
Think about the Dales, for instance, the Flamingos, the beautiful voice. And these wasn't acoustic studios they were recording these records in.
These were vocalists.
Man, these guys could sing.
Yes.
Pookie Hudson of the Spaniels, and they could sing, sir. And I sit all night with Pookie Hudson of the Spaniel. It took Pookie Hudson 40 years to get his first royalty check.
Ain't that something?
40 years.
All
And
that music.
Good Night, Sweetheart. The McGuire sisters made millions of dollars of selling with the record Good Night, Sweetheart. And Pookie Hudson told me point blank, it took him 40 years to get his first royalty
Wow,
check.
that is insane.
You know, they cheated him, you know, they didn't understand the business.
How did you move around, and what relationship you had with the street organizations while you doing all of this?
Well, yeah, there were some street organizations that was, you know, receptive to what I was doing. You know, but that by the same token, you know, being honest, and when I reflect back on it, there was a lot of jealousy also.
I can imagine.
The guys would get records. You know, let's say I would be if I come to Mr. Rick event, and you were DJing, and you would play a song. I'm like, dang, man, that's nice. And I'd go and I'd ask the guy, what was that? And
Right.
he would, I can't tell you that. You know, they start doing, you know, and somebody had said to me, they can't do Sam Chatman like I said. They would do,
Hey.
they would do that, and it got to be a jealousy thing with the DJs. They felt like they were helping you, you know, along by telling
Empowering
you
yourself.
You know, now there were some DJs that get like recently. I'm gonna mention a couple of names. DJ Cross, for instance.
Okay.
I could ask Cross for a song, and he'll say, "I'll send it to you tomorrow," if I didn't know what the song was.
Exactly.
There are some DJs that tell me point blank, I can't give you that because somebody told me not to give it to nobody. You know, there was that kind of relate, and it kind of bothered me in the beginning.
I get it.
And you know, someone said they can't tell you that. Well, they did. Personally, I shared music with everybody.
Right.
And I still do.
In some people's mind, a competitive atmosphere.
Yeah.
You just pretty much ruled the game of DJs. I can imagine the jealousy because you're at the top of the game and you're asking somebody
Right.
this, and they're like, man, you know what I'm saying? What, you finna stomp on me? But for many, 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 many years, everybody wanted to get where Sam Chatman was. Man, you've had so many shows on radio, it don't even make sense.
You know, right now, I do the Omni Channel with Tracy Bell, which reminds me her birthday is coming up.
Happy birthday.
And happy birthday, Tracy. And the thing about the radio station now, we're a digital radio station. When we first, I never forget when they first mentioned that the radio, the Omni Channel was getting ready to go digital.
Right.
And, you know, I was ready to get out the game, get away from getting this. I don't want to be on a regular radio.
Right.
We're the #1 digital radio station in the nation.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right now, I tell people, if you listen to us for a half hour, you'll never listen to another radio station because
man.
we play the absolute best music.
You play the absolute best music, but I enjoy that show because you tell the absolute best story.
You know, and then people, and I get, it's funny that you said that. I got people call me and say, Sam, tell a story. And I'm like, what do you mean just tell one of your stories. And
man.
And I'm like, unbelievable. I didn't know the stories was that interesting, but you know, then the stories were the truth.
You just have story after story after story, man.
You know, I think it comes with, I guess longevity, being in the business.
Of course.
I'll never forget, I was at Perv's house. Quick Ron Isley story.
Right.
And Purvis Staple and I were giving sets together. And Purvis said, let's give some shows, Sam. I said, he said, who do you want? Well, at that time, the Isley Brothers had a record. I think it was It's Your Thing,
It's
Do
Your
What You Want to
Thing.
Do. I said, I want that. Purvis, I got his number. He called Ron Isley on the phone. We talking three-way. And Purvis said, Ron, I need you to come do a show. Ron said, man, Purvis, I got you. Anything you want.
Wow.
So Ron said, Purvis say, I need you to do 2 shows for me. So Ron said 18,000. So Purvis said, no problem. But Ron was telling Purvis he wanted 18,000 per show. Purvis said, Ron, it ain't that big, I can't do it. But 18,000 for the night, I could, handle that, but not for.
Right.
And so we never did get it, Ron Isley.
Wow.
Give you an example. I did Ron Isley at Chicago State, and I just loved him. And the only thing about Ron Isley I didn't love, Ron Isley was married to Angela
Winbush.
and when he dumped her, 'cause, she was sick, at the time, and I kind of fell off a little bit, but I kind of got back with him later. But after I saw his new wife, I saw her, I said, now I understand, But life in the city, as Ebony say, life in the city is not very pretty sometimes.
You have stories that people don't have. I look at you and I say, wow, man, if walls could talk.
If they, and the thing is, Mr. Rick, when I don't tell a lot of these stories that we're talking about, because people look at you like, man, that's the linest dude I ever heard in my life.
No, sir.
Can you imagine just being around James Brown and interviewing Smokey Robinson? Smokey Robinson gave me the greatest compliment that I ever gave in my life. He told me sitting with the Auditorium Theater in the dressing room, he said, "You're the first person that had ever came to interview me."
Wow.
That I wound up interviewing you.
Okay.
And I said, what? He said, and he did. He interviewed me that whole day. And on that particular show, the first time I had ever saw a group called Rufus with Chaka.
Wow. Ain't that something?
They opened for the Miracles at Auditorium Theater. And that's one statement that I will never forget.
I get it.
You came to interview me, and I wound up interviewing you.
That's mind-blowing to us, man.
What's amazing about that, now, I mentioned the Smokey Robinson story, but what's amazing about that show, Chaka Khan, the Rufus came on. I'm standing on the side of the stage watching the show behind the curtain. She had on a knit blouse with nibbles coming through.
Right. On fire.
Blew me away. And Chaka was a young Chaka at that time.
Yeah.
And she blew me away.
I get it.
And I remember that more than I remember what Smokey said. And I had never heard, I didn't know anything about Rufus
Right.
or Chaka Khan at that time.
Right.
And look at it. 2 weeks ago, I was at the United Center with Chaka Khan.
See what I'm saying? For how many years you've been doing that, brother? And bringing those stories back to us?
And you know what? Sometimes when I think about it now, I have to pinch myself and say, damn, did you really do that, Sam?
For real?
Or were you there? Or were you, give me an example. Luther Vandros was at the Pick, not the Pick Congress, but the hotel on Michigan Avenue. I can't think of the name of it right now. I walk in, I was on the radio station, V103 at the time. And I walk in the dressing room, and there's a line from here to across the street, everybody going up on a podium and take pictures with Luther.
Right.
And he interview him, and they walk. So I walk in the room, and Alan Cole, who was the regional promotion man for J Records.
Yes, sir.
He was emceeing, he was up there conducting the interview. I walk in and standing in front of me is Herb Kent, Robin Robertson from Fox 32, and 2 or 3 others. Heavy, yeah. So Alan Cole said, "Oh, wait a minute, y'all got to excuse me. There's somebody that's just walked in that Luther got to speak to right now, and because he got to go on the radio in a few minutes." So I'm thinking he's gonna call Herb up, Robin. He said, "Sam Chatman, come up on the stage." And I walk up there's a line of people waiting to go up and take pictures with Luther. I walk up, and so Alan Cole says, and over the mic and on the PA, got a PA system, he said, "Luther, this is the person that broke your record on the radio. I played Nobody to Love by Luther Vandross." Alan Cole didn't tell me that later on after this interview, he called Clive Davis from J Records and says, "I want you to listen. I got your record. I'm playing the record on the radio."
Right.
He said, "I got your record on the radio." Clive Davis hired Alan Cole over the phone because he
Wow.
got the record. He wasn't even working for J Records. I mean, straight up what. So he told me the story. I said, "You gotta be kidding." He hired him over the phone for the Midwest Regional Director for J Records because he got the record, Luther's record. And he sent me he brought me the record, and I fell in love with this one particular record. There's so much history with this music thing, and it's amazing that the circle is really not that large. It's
Right.
really a small circle.
And it's so powerful in our community because music actually got black people through all this madness. We're having conversations, and this goes back before the civil rights movement, walking into the civil rights movement, coming up out of the civil rights movement, and you've been playing records all this time.
And the weird thing is, like, you know, Dr. King and Muhammad Ali and all these people. I love these people. I mean, actually, Jesse Jackson. I never actually met Dr. King, but I was, you know, I admired him.
Right, you were in that time.
But I love Jesse.
But you gotta realize how many people, man, have come to your parties, man, that have gone on to do some pretty amazing stuff.
You know, that is something that I think about on occasion too. You know, and
How can you not?
It's mind blowing.
Your music has been so strong, brother, that not just here in Chicago, but all over the country, man, you've affected people. You know, when it comes to Steppin, we go all the way back to Boppin and bring that forward, man. I know you got to understand how many lives you've changed.
Yeah, and I do. I think about it occasionally, but you know, the thing that amazes me is that it is mind-boggling.
I get it.
It is. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you. To me, and I think about some of the things that we do now and we did then.
Exactly.
And I just sit back and I just, you know, I honestly don't believe some of them myself. Did I say this, or was I there for this? And it amazes me.
Think about, okay, we start out with Steppin. With Boppin. You got Bishop, and you got Willie Cage, and we go on, Ice Ray and all these guys, man, George Macaroni, all them people. Hey, and rest in peace, George.
Taboo.
That was my man. Yeah, of course, Taboo. We're gonna work all the way up to that. You coining that terminology, and now Steppin has spread all over the world, brother. There would be no Steppin if it weren't for Sam Chatman.
And you know, the amazing thing is that I think about that all the time, and I think about the sacrifices. I tell, you know, there's a lot of stories that I do tell. I tell a story all the time about I left home, and Rosetta, my wife, she said, gave me $10. She said, on your way home, make sure you bring, you know, a loaf of bread home.
Right.
On my way home, I heard Marvin Gaye's Got to Give It Up. I had a set at the Keemus Club that night. I went to Bonnie's Recording and bought with that $10 that Marvin Gaye album.
Wow.
And now I will admit we ate steak the next day because I had a set
right.
at the Keemus Club that, but I had to have Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. I had you know, do we eat that Saturday? I don't remember, but I do remember buying that record at Bonnie's
with that grocery money.
No, that grocery money.
You've come along with some very powerful people in our culture. You know, we talk about a gentleman like George Daniels. You know, he's got the record shop and he's spinning these things. So you guys got to be doing this at the same time.
Well, you know, George wasn't. I didn't associate with George like I did with, say, somebody had Touch of the Past, Out of the Past records. Yeah, that was my guy.
Man.
Now, Out of the Past, the lady who owned Out of the Past, the lady was my daughter Donna's babysitter.
Really?
Yeah, she was. So I knew her before she opened a record shop.
Okay.
So I associated with her. I associated with not so much George, but now George and I, we talk music. Out of the past, Barney's records.
Barney.
And most of the record companies like Motown, use them example, they sent me my records in the mail.
I get it.
I got my records in the mail. There was a guy named Luther Terry who went to Polygram. Luther Terry was instrumental in booking the shows at the High Chaparral.
Wow.
Luther Terry moved to Atlanta and started working for Polygram Records, and he would send me cases and crates of albums and stuff.
Wow.
So I got a chance to meet all these people, through various, just moving around. Record companies, they would send me records.
You mentioned the High Chaparral. Explain to the people what that culture was like, man. We talking about the Stingray and we can go on. Man, there was a culture there that was just miraculous.
For people that don't understand Chicago nightclubs, can't understand the culture of High Chaparral. Every major act in the nation appeared at the High Chaparral. Wow. Clarence Ludd was Clarence Ludd, and there was another guy named Mac Herndon. Mac Herndon was an All-American basketball player at DuSable. Went on to Bradley, and he was the manager at the High Chaparral. Clarence Ludd and those guys were, and Carl Wright, who was with Purvis Spann. He was MC there. You had Johnny Taylor, you had Bobby Womack, Eddie Kendricks.
Man.
Don Cornelius had the first Soul Train Award at the High Chaparral.
Wow.
The first Soul Train Award. And when I got there, I never forget, when I got there, Mr. Rick, Clinton Gent, who I mentioned earlier, was instrumental. He was like Don Cornelius' right-hand man. And I said, man, what time is the show going to start? He said, well, Eddie getting ready now. I said, what do you mean Eddie getting ready? Eddie Kendrick's going to come on before Bobby Womack? Man, you can't bring Eddie. I had never seen Bobby Womack.
Right.
Bobby Womack blew me away. I mean,
Hey.
Totally. I had never seen him. I didn't know he was a left-handed guitar player. Bobby Womack was incredible.
At that time?
Oh, sir. He opened the show. Eddie Kendricks opened the show, but I figured, man, I can go home now. Something told me to wait. Bobby Womack destroyed the place. So you mentioned High Chaparral, Johnny Taylor, Nancy Wilson at the top of the game. She was there. I mean, I saw all these people at the High Chaparral, and you know what was so amazing? They treated me like royalty because I gave sets there too.
Right.
They had never no cover charge for Sam.
Right.
I could come and I could have my guests come on in, sir. Unbelievable. High Chaparral, and High Chaparral was a large place.
A big place.
Yes, it was a large.
And it was a popping place.
It was.
Man.
Excuse me. Was popping. Yes,
was popping. That was
right.
your place.
Yes, right. It was a popping
Hey,
place.
man, you write your story, and what is it that you would want people to remember about Sam?
That I love music and I love people, and I can't say it no other way.
I get it.
I love people and I love music.
I get it. And
and somebody asked me, another DJ asked me, when are you most happiest, Sam? You know what I said? When my dance floor is full. Make my dance floor full, and that means they're enjoying the music.
You have a beautiful daughter that's doing some amazing things right now as well.
Samantha.
Yeah, give us a little bit about that. No, this is another icon in Chicago.
Samantha is on ABC 7.
Hey, don't get no bigger than that.
She is an investigative reporter, plus she has, every Saturday and Sunday, she has her own show. She is just, three of my daughters, actually, Father's Day, they came to the radio station, they hung out with me.
Wow.
And Samantha, Donna, and Kyra. I have 5 girls, by the way.
Right. Oh, okay.
Samantha,
wow.
Donna, Kyra, Cynthia, and Rita. And they all, and honestly, they all incredible ladies. There are a couple of boys, Marlon and Kevin. But
Very
My
beautiful
girls.
people. Very beautiful people.
Oh, excuse me. They are.
And I know you gonna sit up here and pull my leg and tell
Sir.
me that all that came out of your part.
Excuse me. What do you mean? Pull your leg. That's the truth.
I want to talk about music today. Your experience, or if, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
Hal Melvin and the Blue Notes was incredible.
Man, what?
But but let me just say, I had to have Melvin and the Blue Notes at the Keyman's Club on a Friday when the Love I Lost was that album was the #1 album in the
my
nation.
God.
Now the only thing about Hal Melvin, even though at that particular time I didn't know who Hal Melvin was.
Okay.
We only knew Teddy Pendergrass or Teddy.
Right.
Later on, I tell people today, during that era, we didn't play the records that Hal Melvin was singing. We were playing the records that Teddy
was singing.
But later on, maybe 4 or 5 years later, and
What?
people are amazed that we didn't have albums. We had 45. So later on, when we started getting into the albums, we picked up on the Hal Melvin cuts, the cut that he was singing. So I love them. They weren't my favorite group, but they were up there in the top 3.
I get it.
My favorite group was the Tempting Temptations.
I totally
and the
understand.
Whispers, etc. Can you imagine on the West Side at the Keyman's Club, Hal Melvin, when they were the #1 group in the nation?
And we're talking about before the great voice of Teddy Pendergrass. Harold Melvin was a beast, man.
Oh, he was an unbelievable beast. The amazing thing, Mr. Rick, is that how many artists on his of his stature could let Teddy Pendergrass sing lead on a song. Not
What?
that many.
No,
Not
sir.
that many.
No, sir.
The leader of the group was the leader of the group. But Harold Melvin let Teddy become...
Featuring Teddy
He let him
Pendergrass.
become a star. Here's the amazing thing, Mr. Rick. It's still popular today.
Man,
You put on a Harold Melvin and a Blue Note record right now and they start screaming.
brother, I don't think I'm going to go 3 days in my life without listening to some Harold Melvin
And
and
how
the Blue
long
Notes.
Teddy Pendergrass is deceased, Harold Melvin is deceased, and I don't know how many members of the group is still with us. I don't know.
But they still up here.
It's still up there, and the amazing thing about this music thing, they will still be there 20, 30 years from now.
Going strong.
Still be there.
That's the thing that you do. You keep that music alive.
And another thing too, when you leave, let's say we got an event going on today, and when people, I actually know I did my job when they walking out the door.
Exactly.
I know it, and I know when I didn't, and maybe I didn't feel right, but I know I did my job. There was a song, I can't remember who made the song, where the entertainer, it's called The Entertainer by Tony Clark. That song.
Yes, sir.
He said, he at the end of the song, he said, "You fooled them well for the money they paid." And you're the entertainer. And that was your job, was to entertain these people. And if you didn't do it and do it well, you know it. The ladies, the guys, and you expected them to come a certain way.
This stuff with P. Diddy and R. Kelly and all of this, as long as you've been in the industry, did you see that coming?
No, and don't get me wrong, I didn't know anything. I only knew of P. Diddy. I didn't know him. I knew R. Kelly, and I loved him. And, in addition to doing 2 or 3 events at R. Kelly's house. R. Kelly was a Capricorn. I did his birthday. I did the New Year's Eve party. I felt that I didn't feel too good about what happened to R. Kelly. P. Diddy, I didn't know anything about that situation, so I can't comment on it.
But Kelly was one of ours.
Kelly was one of our. stepping in the name of love, and just the idea of stepping in the name of love.
Keep it right there.
That
It defines step.
it defines it. The weird thing is, I don't care. You know,
Not my conversation.
Treated me like royalty, and some of the people that was around him, like I hung out with Wayne Williams, who went on to Jive Records, become a producer or vice president or whatever. Wayne Williams, Kirk Townsend, these people were around him. I try to get them to, to talk about him. They don't. Speaking of R. Kelly, his first appearance at the Allstate Arena. My daughter was there, Samantha, and she said right before R. Kelly came on the stage, they were showing the video. They had the video up with the love letter, and wiping the bar down was a DJ by the name of Sam Chatman. And the people started screaming, and Sam, and R. Kelly, the show wasn't supposed to start. Samantha told this story, and she said, R. Kelly came out, he said, y'all know him? And everybody was hollering, that's Sam. And he started the show. She said she was on the first row. She said she felt so proud. My daddy, And I didn't tell her that I was the bartender. If you go online and pull up the love letter video,
right?
You see me cleaning the bar off, and my name is not Sam, it's Stan.
Okay.
R. Kelly wrote the script,
right?
And then the lady comes out, and then they go into the conversation.
Yeah, but he knew the real deal.
But
Hey, man.
Other than it being a Capricorn, I just loved him.
This is something that I have the privilege of doing on this show, and I choose to share it with you. And when you came on, I said triple OG. Yeah, that's a whole nother game there. You know what I'm saying? See, your history has to be there to be a triple OG. How do you define OG?
Well, when I asked the producer, what did OG mean? He said, and he explained it to me. To me, OG means we are originals. It definitely, we are original what we do, what we say.
Thank you.
The impact on history, I'm talking about Sam Chatman or Calvin Jarrett or anybody or Mr. Rick. We can't define our own history.
Thank you.
Somebody else has to do that.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the thing that I love about it is that whatever you think, that is your opinion, and I can live with it.
And I'm okay with it.
And I mean that sincerely. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to be considered on a positive level.
Don't we all?
Yeah, but it's your opinion. I had a gentleman come up to me once and he said, I just want to apologize to you. I said, what are you apologizing? He said, I thought you were one way and then I found out you was another way. I said, well, what swayed you? And I had a guy with me. He said, I've been knowing this gentleman ever since he was a teenager. He said, he's been with you ever since 1974.
Imagine
and he's
that.
Still with you. He said, you got to be all right. He said, because I know this guy ever since he was 15, 16 years old, and he's still with you. And I said, that is incredible. He said, but I thought you were something else, but I found out that you weren't that person.
And in most cases, that's pretty much how it goes.
That's life.
It's with dignity here. A lot of people come here, sit on these couches. They have been original gangsters, but we evolve. You've seen it all. Excuse my expression, but I want the world to hear what I'm saying very clearly. Here in America, black people in America, we some badass niggas.
Yes, we are.
I want to make it clear and put it on the record, you know what I'm saying? And we have to protect that and pass it on and make sure the world knows that we're not buffoons, man. And here's a gentleman that has been giving us the beauty of it for many, many years, brother, and I want to thank you. And I can't, hey man, you've always been so gracious to me, man.
Well,
I can't thank you enough, brother. You're a living legend, hey man, and I'm always tell your story, brother.
let's do it.
My man, that's it. That's all.
Thank you.
My man. So, Taboo, in that conversation, what is Slim to you?
Man, first of all, I just want to thank God for allowing us to be in a peaceful place, because it's through His mercy that we here today, man. And it's gonna be hard for me to get through this interview, because y'all might see me crying, man, because I'm sitting here with two men, that absolutely changed my life, man. Sam Chatman, he got us, man. We was 13 years old, man. And it ain't no Lil Mike and Taboo without Sam Chatman. And Slim, what people gotta know about Slim was me and Lil Mike's idol. Me and Lil Mike used to, that's when we came to Sam.
You
This
brought
is we was like
everything
through
he
the window. And the thing about this whole scenario is that I tell people Sam is the greatest DJ of all time when it come down to this Steppin game. Slim and them just was ahead of their time.
If you live in a city, any city, big or small, and you would like for Mr. Rick to come to your town, get as many subscribers as you can in your town, go in the comments. Let me know who your OGs are. They could be men or ladies, doesn't matter, as long as they have a great history. Whoever has the most subscribers, I will interview them. We won't pick them, you will pick them. So we'd like to tell those stories. Let me know why Mr. Rick should come to your city and interview the OG ladies and the OG gentlemen. That's it. That's all.